All right, Corey Hawk, welcome to the Happy Hustle podcast, my brother. I am super stoked to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. I mean, you are a badass U.S. Marine veteran, a survival expert, an organic archer, and you were on the season 7 Alone, the $1 Million Challenge, where you basically get dropped off in the Arctic for as long as you can survive. And, you know, I love that show. And I knew when I found out about you, I had to have you on the podcast because not only are you those things I previously mentioned, but you're also a happy hustler who is like doing what he loves, making amazing custom bow and arrows. And I just wanted to, you know, share your wisdom, your love, your passion for archery with the happy hustlers, and also talk about how maybe the happy hustlers out there can also turn their passion project into an actual profitable business. So I'm excited to get into all that. But before I do, what is something interesting about yourself, Corey, that not too many people know?
Oh, man, not too many people know.
Curveball.
I think I don't think a lot of people know that I'm really obsessed with like dating and attraction psychology and like the sacred masculine feminine balance and just the different archetypes of masculinity and sort of like ancient energy work. That's something that I study a lot and I believe in, and I sort of keep it to myself.
Wow. Yeah, that's super interesting. I think that's intriguing. Where do you dive into your research? Do you read books on it, or what's your favorite source to pull from?
Yeah, it's mostly books. I mean, they're different. I'd say one of my favorites is like The Way of the Superior Man, which I mean, just the title alone can trigger a lot of people, but it's not what people think. Like, it just breaks down. It has nothing to do with like men being superior over women or anything like that. It just teaches men how to be a little bit more of a superior version of themselves, as far as like being centered in their masculinity and their divine purpose, and you know, how to sort of approach relationships without falling off center, and how to sort of like understand feminine energy a little bit better and how it flows versus our, you know, stable, like goal driven energy. So I don't know. I found that very helpful. And
yeah, that's great. I love that. And I mean, I'm big into, you know, the masculine and feminine, you know, energy vibe and the balance between the both. And I think, you know, one of the most important things that a lot of people potentially don't realize is that we have both sides of us. You know, we're both feminine and masculine within our bodies. And at any given time, we can choose to bring out those different qualities. So I just think it's interesting, you know, especially that book is a great read. I didn't finish it all the way. I'll be honest. I got halfway through it, but now you're making me want to read it again. So Corey, let's get into it. Talk to me a little bit about your history and your background and what life was like growing up.
Yes. So I was raised in a really small town in Southeast Nebraska of about 110, 120 people. And I come from a long line of outdoorsmen. Everybody on both my mother and my father's side of the family are really big into hunting and fishing and, you know, just bushcrafting. And growing up, I always had either a bow and arrow or a slingshot or a rifle in my hands. My parents introduced us to like weapon safety very early on. And my dad and all my uncles were diehard bow hunters. So every family vacation I can remember growing up was pretty much us going out west to chase some game animal, whether it was antelope or mule deer or turkeys. And then, you know, all the kids would hang out at camp while the guys went out and hunted. And we'd sometimes the older, like my grandparents would stay back, or like my great uncles would stay back, and we'd learn about fishing. Had a couple expert fishermen in my family, so taught us about fishing, wild edibles, processing game. There was a lot of lessons about just respecting animals and you know, treating them with love, even though you have to kill them, which is kind of a dynamic that confuses a lot of people. But yeah, I was very fortunate to be raised up in a family that got me out into the woods often and taught me morals and, you know, the way to do it right, the way to appreciate it and not just take from the land, but sort of like immerse yourself in that cycle of life.
Yeah, so that's beautiful and such a gift that, you know, has been passed down through generation in your family, especially mine as well. You know, I grew up, you know, camping, fishing, hiking, hunting, and I think it's a lost art among our generation. You know, now we're so consumed by our tech and our devices and our indoor living spaces and our indoor gym facilities. And, you know, I'm guilty as well. I like the creature comforts just as much as the next guy, but I think it's important to understand, you know, our hunter-gatherer history and the balance of life and how we can ethically take life and, you know, also be good to the environment and protect Mother Earth. I'm big into, you know, protecting the environment. And I think right now it's beautiful to hear you talk about it and how it's been passed down. Talk to me a little bit about what after high school was like, what made you join the military and kind of that whole experience, becoming a U.S. Marine.
Yeah. So, I mean, the high school thing is, I think it's probably the same for a lot of people. You sort of get away from your childhood passions. You start to pursue, like for me, it was cars and dirt bikes and girls and whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like you get sidetracked for a few years. And so I sort of got away from hunting. I rode dirt bikes really hard for a lot of years. That sort of kept me distracted. And then I left for college and I was just going to do the thing, right? I was very interested in health and fitness. So I went to college for about a year and a half I was pursuing health and nutrition sciences. And I did that for a little while and just decided that college really wasn't for me. I didn't really feel challenged by it, I guess. It just didn't resonate with my personality type to sit in classes and lectures and do homework. So I decided that, I don't know, I joined the Marines. I always sort of fantasized about it as a kid, right? Like we would always play Army guys or like pretend we were Marines or pretend we were snipers out in the woods. So that was a big part of my childhood. And I just decided to go for it and pursue more of like a physical challenge than an academic one. And I chose the Marines for no other reason than being young and bullheaded and, you know, wanting to go for like the most physically demanding branch.
Yep.
And I was just sort of young and immature. I walked into the recruiter's office and I was like, hey, I want to join the Marines. I don't care what it is. I just want to go to combat. So they put me in for combat option, which, because at the time infantry was totally full. It was like a 2-year wait for an infantry spot with the full swing. So they put me in combat option. 2 weeks later, I left as a motor transport operator and did the whole basic training thing, got through all that. And then I attached to 1st Marines as a motor transport operator and got sent to a specialty school after that to become a wrecker operator or a combat recovery operator. So, I mean, I love my time in the Marines, but that's sort of how it all
transpired.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And thank you for your service. And, you know, I know you did 2 combat tours in Afghanistan. And I mean, for me, I always wanted to join, if any, the Marines. And, you know, and I was a criminal justice major. So I was like, you know what, if I'm not going to join the military, I'll do FBI, like badass FBI agent. And then I saw the law from the other side. I got in some trouble. You know, I was always in and out of trouble growing up. And I was like, I don't want to be around criminals and crime the rest of my life as an FBI agent. So I pivoted. And, you know, authority was always something that I was like, I couldn't take someone screaming in my face, you know, or I said I couldn't to myself. So I didn't end up joining any military, but my brother-in-law, he's a U.S. Navy chief. And, you know, I appreciate all of our servicemen and women out there who, you know, sacrifice. And if you could kind of distill your lessons from the military, what would you say is one of like the biggest takeaways you had from your time?
Definitely just discipline.
Yeah.
I mean, the discipline to wake up early. I mean, I don't wake up Marine Corps early anymore, but the discipline to wake up early, to make sure you get your exercise every day, to have a plan of action for the day, to, you know, I mean, just do what you have to do every single day and make sacrifices along the way to make sure that it happens. And then another really valuable thing that I took away was leadership skills. I moved up the ranks fairly quickly, got meritoriously promoted a couple of times. So
nice.
By the time I got out after 4 years, I was already a sergeant and I was overseeing 53 Marines. So the leadership skills were huge. It led me to get out of the Marine Corps and work my way up the management ladders in a couple different places fairly quickly. So just being able to lead, in my case, it was an infantry regiment, so it was males only. There were no females on the whole camp for First Marines. So just the ability to lead men has come in handy more times than I can count.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, leadership is essential in every facet of life. What would you say is like a great leadership happy hustle hack that you found effective?
Always lead from the front. Always lead from the front. You need to set the example for your men. Like, you know, running into the hellfire or whatever, being on the front lines with them, getting dirty with them. It's just a working man does not respect someone who sits on their high horse in their comfy air-conditioned office and barks orders. So you got to get out there with your boys. You got to get dirty.
Oh, I love that. So always lead from the front. All you happy hustlers, whether it's your team or your family, you know, lead with, you know, from example, like actually doing the thing, and you'll definitely be respected more so in the process. So great advice there, Correy. Talk to us a little bit about, you know, your time when you got back from the military, and then how'd you get into starting your business, you know, organic archery?
Yeah. So I left the military after 4 years. I did my two tours in Helmand Province, Afghanistan. I was feeling pretty tired. And at the time I just made a decision not to enlist based on my feelings, get back out in the civilian world and just see what that had to offer. So I left there. And then I came back home. I started to work at a limestone mine where I was sort of like a plant operations manager. So I oversaw the just like all of the equipment that makes the gravel in the limestone mine. So did that for a couple of years, and then I got into the advertising industry. I worked for a company that does large format graphics. So like all over the city of Omaha, we would do everything from vehicle wraps to billboards, to all the advertisements you see in the mall, to like a bunch of rebranding for banks and corporations and stuff. So lots of different advertising media. Moved myself up in that pretty quickly, where eventually I was managing a shop with a couple guys under me. And then nice. The whole time that I was doing that, I was actually coming home after my full-time job at night and building bows, because I'm going to swing back around real quick. But when I first got back from the military, I really didn't have that much interest in the outdoors at that time. I was still just sort of coming off of this other lifestyle. So I stayed in the city for a little while, and then I moved back home to work in that limestone mine. And for whatever reason, I don't know if it was like a therapeutic creative outlet for me or something, but I bought a recurve bow, and that sort of like reinvigorated my love for archery. And then I started breaking lots and lots of arrows. So I decided I'd read a little bit and learn how to make some wooden arrows. So I started making wooden arrows in my basement. And this is all just after my full-time job in the evenings, and started making arrows in my basement. And then probably 6 months of doing that, I started to feel weird about shooting these handcrafted arrows out of my store-bought bow. So I just started, I got online and I bought a bunch of books, and I just started reading myself crazy on the art of bow building, and built my first bow in the basement of a dark basement of an apartment complex. And yeah, just working after that, it pretty much snowballed. I built one bow, and then I loved it, but I wasn't happy with it. So I built another and another and another, and every one just gets better and better. So you sort of become hooked on it.
Yeah.
And,
that's great.
In the community, they just call it like the bow builder's bug, right? You just build one, and then for whatever reason, for the rest of your life, you're just chasing that perfect bow. So I did that through shifting careers. Stayed every day. I would go to work full time, come in the evenings. For 6 years, I worked in the evenings, just doing it as a side hustle, just doing it for fun. And then there was a bunch of pressure from my family and friends to get on the internet, because I wasn't using any social media whatsoever. And so they convinced me to start an Instagram account, and I started posting my work. And it wasn't very long after I started posting bows that some well-known people from the outdoor industry sort of caught on, and they ordered bows. And then
Oh,
it
wow.
really just gained momentum from there because they were posting about their experience with their bows, and that exposed me to a large audience. Then my page started to grow, and after 6 years of doing it part time, after work, it got to the point where I either had to choose to quit making bows or quit my job because I was working a full time job and coming home and working late into the night, getting very little sleep, rinse and repeat about 7 days a week. I'd work all through the weekends trying to fill bow orders, and I was just getting burnt out. So I had to quit my job and start building bows full time.
That's awesome. You got to quit your job, right? That's a blessing. I mean, so, just to recap, like if you guys are listening to this and hearing Correy's story, what's awesome about it is he didn't, just completely quit cold turkey and then say, oh, I got to figure it out. He was gradually building his company, throughout his time of still full-time employment, mitigating his risk, growing the business, growing the brand, continuously building on the side, busting his butt to do so, right? And then, I'm sure you were tired working hard like that, and then coming home working hard again for the custom bows. But when you find something that you love to do, it's worth it, right? Talk to us a little bit about where the business is now and kind of, some of those lessons that you've learned from just turning your passion into, a profitable business.
Yeah, I mean, you already touched on one of the main points that I tell people when they ask me how I got started is I tell them straight away, don't quit your full-time job. Like find something that you love to do with your hands. I mean, we're just talking like craftsmanship trades or, turning your craft into your profession. Find something that you love to do and give that thing like 1 or 2 hours every single night after work. Even just 5 days a week, 1 or 2 hours after work, and you would be amazed at what you can accomplish in 1 year with just 1 or 2 hours of work every night. And then within 5 years, I mean, you've pretty much mastered your craft, and you're starting to gain momentum. And once your work becomes more refined and you're putting it out there, people start to take notice, and then it'll start to maybe generate generate an audience, and then maybe it starts to generate a little bit of supplemental income, and then it will start to snowball if you keep putting in the time and keep paying your dues. Then it'll start to snowball to the point where like there's a possibility that you could see it replacing your full-time income. But I definitely don't recommend that unless you've got a bunch of money saved up, like a couple years salary that you can fall back on. Don't quit your full-time job and just go straight in. Like understand you're going to have to make some sacrifices up front, and you're going to have to work extra hard to make your craft your living.
Yeah, that's great advice, Correy. Seriously, guys, if you want it bad enough, it will happen. Just don't quit. Continuously learn every single day. Put forth the effort. There's no such thing as an overnight success. People, they see you and where you are now, they don't see like even this podcast, like they don't see how many hours go into like the first 50 episodes, which I didn't make a penny on, it's like now finally I got, some sponsors, it's a momentum and it's still growing, but it's like people out there, we're so used to that instant gratification, like the dopamine dump of, oh, I got to share, and they forget that, good things take time and you got to build it slowly but surely. And I love that, you just put yourself out there and you dedicated yourself to your craft. And now here you are making it for some of the industry's, best and brightest and most prominent outdoorsmen. So that's awesome. I can't wait to give a try on one of your bows. And, Correy actually set up something cool, which I want to share with the happy hustlers. Anyone out there who wants to get into archery and wants to, really like get primal with it and tap back into our ancient roots, you can go to organicarchery.com, and Correy's hooking everyone up with a happy hustler discount of 10%. So, I highly recommend. What would you say to people who are just getting into, like archery? What bow would you recommend? Or, is it all variants on, I guess, their style and type? Or give us some knowledge on that, like starter steps.
Yeah. I think I can only speak for people who are going to do the traditional side. I shot a compound for 1 year, and I just decided it wasn't for me. So I can't speak to anybody who's trying to get into the compound world. But I think if you're just getting started and you want to go the traditional route, the best thing to do is understand that you don't have to have $1,000 bow to get started. I mean, you don't have to go straight for you can if you want to. Like my work would be considered like the extreme. They're all wood self bows. They tend to have like little shifts in characteristics as the humidity changes and as the season changes, and they're shot off the knuckles. So this is like all possible shooting aids removed.
Oh, wow.
It's pretty primitive, but you can get started with a much less expensive bow. I mean, there are bows out there that cost $150 to $200 that'll shoot great for you for many years. So pick yourself up a nice cheap bow just to make sure that you actually like the sport first, because Bruce, sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah, there's
what kind of dog you got?
I just have a really old miniature pinscher.
Oh, nice.
I rescued him when he was 8 years old, and now he's like 18 years old.
Oh man, 18. That's pretty awesome. Well, I gotta know what's in the water over there in Nebraska.
It's just all good food, man. Just feed him good food and give him plenty of exercise.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah. Okay. So try not to go straight for like a super huge investment. I think that's one thing that turns a lot of compound archers off, is it costs you $1,000 for a bow just to get set up and shooting. But with traditional archery, you can get started for $200, $250. Figure out if you like it. Learn the fundamentals of the sport, and don't overthink it, because there's so much information out there right now about. I mean, there's podcasts out there that are really great for experienced archers, but they break the shot cycle down into like these super intense sciences, all the way down to every little part of your shot sequence. And for a beginner, that can be a lot to digest, and it can really make you confused. And the archery shot's a lot like a golf swing. Like if you just start thinking way too much about it, it'll just mess you all up. So learn your fundamentals, like your anchor point, your bow arm, how to actually look at the target effectively, how to get back tension or full expansion, whatever you want to call it, and just shoot for fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't get so wrapped up in the science of archery that it takes away all the fun, because you'd be amazed how accurate you can be just shooting arrows just for fun and shooting lots of them a day.
Yeah. And it's in our blood and it's in our DNA, right? I mean, it's a primitive skill that we, as human beings, once possessed. So I just think, overcomplicating it is something a lot of people do in many facets of life. And I think getting back to the basics, simplicity is essential. And I love that you broke down that process. But for those people who are listening and do want a really high quality custom made bow, I don't want you guys to not think that, just because you're getting into it, you can't start at the top, because Correy's work is amazing. You got to check out his website. I put a link to it in the description and on the show notes. You guys can check it out. And then code HAPPY will save, 10%. So get the hookup if you're interested in getting into archery. So Correy, I like to talk about some tangible happy hustle hacks and, give the listeners something that they can actually extract and use as soon as they stop listening, like right away. And I like to talk about different happy hustle hacks in different areas of life. One in particular is health, and you being big into, health and fitness, and you're ripped. I know the organic part of archery is very catchy, but talk to us a little bit about your health, and if, organic, fruits and vegetables is all you eat, or maybe some happy hustle hacks that people can apply to help their own lives.
Yeah, for sure. The organic archery name actually just came from, I was doing a hike in Colorado with one of my good friends, and we were just sort of brainstorming ideas for the business. And he just says, how about organic archery? It fits your lifestyle. Like, you're all into the health and fitness and the food and everything. So I was thinking, man, that's got a nice ring.
It does.
And so that was it. He thought of the business name, and I just ran with it, created Organic Archer Instagram page, Organic Archery website. And it's I try to sort of keep the Instagram and the social media and everything really focused on the archery, but health and fitness and the whole organic lifestyle is definitely a big part of the equation for me. I think if we take good care of our bodies, and you keep yourself strong and keep your mind sharp, it just increases your work capacity like tenfold. And you can see it when you're in the industry too, or when you're in different industries too. Like if you're somebody that's paying your dues, you can definitely outperform usually people who aren't getting enough sleep or who have really poor diets or, who just make bad lifestyle choices. So there's really nothing special about what I'm doing. I think I can give you guys like my exact individual formula, but the truth is, I think a lot of people already sort of know what they should be doing. There's a lot of information out there already about health and fitness, and a lot of it's conflicting. But what it really boils down to is clean, whole foods most of the time, right? Like I'm not perfect. I don't want to be perfect. I love life. I love food. I don't want to be this, hermit inside of my house eating boiled rice and chicken for the rest of my life. So I would say, like, for me, it's about like an 80-20 healthy versus indulgences. So when I'm at the house, I eat it's a fairly paleo diet, like mostly starchy tubers, vegetables, and lean cuts of meat and lots of fats. I really try not to eat a ton of like breads and stuff. It sounds silly, but I've really got a little bit of a gluten sensitivity. Like if I eat breads or grains, I really swell up and get full. So there's not a lot of grains in my diet.
A lot of people actually have that, are gluten intolerant, and they don't even realize it. So I love that you even brought that up.
Yeah, I didn't know that I was gluten intolerant actually until I got back from Alone. The total just fish and berries for a couple weeks, and then you have to go through the refeeding program because your gut microbiome's all messed up from the experience. And when I got back home, man, that gluten was tearing me up.
Really,
it took that elimination diet to figure out that it was the bread that was making me feel that way. So,
that's very interesting. So, paleo mainly. I mean, do you work out every day? What's your kind of? Is it all body weight stuff or?
It's a lot of body weight. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, during the summertime, I actually cancel my gym membership and just do calisthenics in the yard. Like I've got a tractor tire out back. I got sort of like a pull-up bar set up. I got this little versatile home gym set up called the Chain Bells. It's just a company called Chain Bell Weight Co. And they have like this home gym. He has this home gym set up that he makes from scratch. And it's like these
cool.
Adjustable chains. They can go anywhere from basically like 5 to 100 pounds. So I do a lot of work with those. It's just, weird. And the chains are really awkward objects, right? Like they shift a lot and they build your stabilizers. So it's a lot of calisthenics, like pull-ups, push-ups, dips, old school military stuff. Lots of running. I try to do 3. I don't do tons of running, but I like to do 3 miles a couple times a week. I would say on average, I probably work out 4 days a week steady.
Nice.
And,
I mean, I'm big with that too. The calisthenics and body weight training. I just think, like flexibility is so much more of a priority to me, and like being nimble and, especially being into martial arts. Like I just very much cherish my body and like its ability. And I don't want to just focus on, static movements, pick weight up, put weight down, pick weight up. It's like there's more to working out than that. So I like that, you incorporate natural movement, and, running is important. I'm not that big of a runner, I got to admit. I played soccer my whole life, so I have to run for soccer. And I played last night, and I think I pulled my ass muscle. But other than that, I got to say we have a pretty similar workout and health mindset. So that's awesome. Let's get into Alone, because I mean, I'm going to come back to some tangible happy hustle hacks. But since you talked about it, I want to go there. Talk to us a little bit about that Alone experience. And for those people who don't know about Alone, give us a little bit of overview.
So Alone is a television show that is put on by the History Channel, and they take 10 participants and they drop them off in some of the most remote and dangerous places on Earth. They fly you out, they drop you off by helicopter. You have 10 survival items that you are able to choose from a very strict list of about 30 or 40 things. So from that list, you choose your 10 items, and that's all you've got, plus the clothes on your back. Like, I mean, they allow you to have things like some base layers, a winter parka, a couple pairs of gloves, like those items, and a couple pairs of boots. Like those items don't count against you, but your main survival items are just 10 chosen from a list, and they drop you off. And every season before mine was last man standing, so up to 1 year. So they would drop the participants off, and they wouldn't say, I mean, you have no idea how many other people have been eliminated. You just go until you can't go anymore. And then you have to call in and officially tap out, after which they come and extract you. And basically, if they have to intervene in your situation in any way, you're extracted. So if you have a medical issue that you have to call and get checked out, you're done. Or so the idea is
it's a real deal.
Yeah. For people that don't know, it is real. It is 100% real. There is no camera crew. Yeah. There's no support crew. You're miles from anywhere. They just dump you off. In my case, in the Canadian Arctic, with your pack and your camera gear. And you go through an extensive self-filming school. So people are like, how are you guys getting these shots? And it's because we went to self-filming school. So it's kind of.
That's that's smart investment on their part.
Yeah, it's legit. And for my season, because I think Jordan Jonas from season 6 had what it took. He could have easily went 100 days or longer.
He's a badass.
The guy knows his stuff. And the same thing. I mean, he reeks of experience. These guys like Jordan and Roland, who have been living this lifestyle ever since they were kids, like way out in dangerous and remote areas. They've got a little bit of an edge for sure. Because nothing replaces experience in any situation, I feel like. Yeah. So they drop you off, and you see how long you can last. And for season 7, which was my season, they actually put a 100-day cap on it and called it the $1 Million Challenge. So if anyone made it to 100 days, then, because previously I believe the record was like 87 days, set by a Fowler. I can't remember his first name, but Fowler from season 3. So they said, if anyone can make it 100 days, we'll double the prize money. And
wow. And that, would they have given it to, let's say, all 10 of you if you all 10 made it?
Yeah.
Oh,
that was the catch, is if more than one person makes it, you got to split it however many ways. So there's $1 million pot at the end.
Oh.
However many times that has to be split, it's just $1 million.
Oh, and, they're smart. They're smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if you tapped out, the old prize for every other season used to be $500,000 for the last man standing. So in this season, if you were the last person standing, but you tap out before 100 days, you only get $500,000. So you had to be the last person standing at 100 days to get $1 million.
Man, that is such a badass show. I'm actually, super interested in going on it and seeing how I do as well. I mean, I need a lot more training, so I'm going to come hang out with you for a little bit before. But talk to us how you did. Like, what was, what happened with your series? I mean, spoiler alert for anyone listening who hasn't seen it, but give us like a little bit of, insights on, your experience.
Yeah, I mean, you try to plan, because it's a very long process. The whole casting process, I mean, from the time you set up your first interview to the time you're actually dropped off by helicopter is about 1 year. So you've got a lot of time. You've got a lot of time to think about this. You've got a lot of time to train and to sharpen your skills in your weak areas, and you spend so much time planning. I mean, I spent months and months just knocking off weak areas, spending time out in the woods, doing winter camping and stuff like that to try to get acclimated to cold, doing all the Wim Hof stuff in the snow.
Nice.
Like, just trying to prepare myself as much as you can. And then when you actually get dropped off, the show has this term that they've coined, drop shock, right? Like you get dropped and all of a sudden you just almost black out because this helicopter flies away and you're in the middle of this super gnarly environment with nothing but what you've got on your back, and
grizzly bears and wolves and mountain lions.
There's bear sign everywhere, wolves, wolverines. So you get a little bit of drop shock, and then you just kind of take some time to orient yourself. And I had a plan in my head that I was just going to spend my first week I was going to do 2 days of just exploration, because you have what's called like a geo zone, right? It's a GPS coordinated boundary that you're able to operate in, and it's a pretty large swath of land, like nothing outrageous, but big enough that it takes a couple days to explore the whole thing. So I took 2 days. I explored my whole area looking for the best possible shelter spot. And then for 5 days after that, I was just telling myself, like, this first week, I just want to set up my house. I want to be warm and cozy and get this shelter done while I've got all this energy and all these reserve calories in my system. So that's what I did. And problem was, for me, spoiler alert, while I was building my shelter, I was carrying one of the big timbers for my lower floor, like bed frame area where I was going to sleep. And I just slipped on the terrain. It's just really gnarly terrain in my drop zone. It was kind of on the side of a hill, and there was like granite rock slides that had been covered in moss, and there were these big holes that you could fall in that would just swallow you right up. So every step out there was just meticulous, and it was actually very, very mentally exhausting just to always be watching where you're stepping, because there's so many hazards. Jeez. But yeah, it was like the fourth day. I had a huge tree on my shoulder, and I just took one wrong step and I slipped into a hole, and I heard an audible snap in my knee. Kind of thought it was no big deal. Carried on for a couple days, just building my shelter hardcore. So I didn't really have the time for the damage to set in. In my mind, I wasn't really injured. And then by probably day 5 or 6, it started to fill full of fluid. And a couple days later, I started having some really bad stability issues, which is, I mean, that just compounds the risk when you're in that dangerous of an environment. I mean, the rocks along the shore are very slippery. The water's cold. The water's deep. So when you've got a knee that you can't fully trust, it just makes things so much more difficult. And then a few days after that, it was really full of fluid and pressure. I mean, I had a Baker cyst on the back of my leg that was probably the size of about a small avocado. So,
jeez,
it was. And then by about day 9, I started. So the TV show. Sorry, I'm sidetracking here. The TV show shows that I have one sleepless night, right? They kind of make the injury look fast and furious, and there's no harm, no foul on that. Like, they have like 80 hours of footage from me. And
so much editing. Yes,
yeah. So the reality was, like, I spent 3 nights with no sleep, and I was getting this feverish feeling in my leg, basically from my ankle to my hip, like a hot throbbing feeling. And I started to get a little bit worried that I was going to go into septic shock or get sepsis, which is blood poisoning, basically. So because if a Baker cyst ruptures, you can get what's called septic arthritis. So that fluid gets inside of your system and basically poisons your bloodstream.
Wow.
And it was to the point where my knee was so hot and tender that if I bumped it at night with my other leg, it'd wake me right up out of a sleep, and I couldn't get back to sleep. And
damn,
it just got to the point where I'm sitting out there and I'm like, I'm 88 days from the finish line.
Yeah.
And I'm injured, and the challenge is astronomical when you're at 100% health anyway. So yeah, I had to make the smart call. Like, I've got a very active life. I love lifting weights. I love running. I love hiking. I love getting out. And the idea of doing permanent damage to the point where, like, I need a knee replacement or something would have been devastating. I couldn't risk it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you made the smart choice, man. It's like, obviously, unforeseen circumstances. The challenge is astronomical, as you said, even in perfect health. 100 days in the Arctic, guys. You don't know, like, how cold does it get there? I mean,
I checked the weather on my. I mean, I was at home, comfy in recovery at the time, but I looked at the weather around like day 80-ish, like high 70s, low 80s, and they had a week straight of negative 65.
Oh my goodness.
So
that is so cold. I mean, a negative 65 is just freezing. And this is like, they call it the Super Bowl of survival. So you have to, like, think about, long and hard. Is it worth it, to put yourself through that? And I know you said, as a Marine, adapt, improvise, and overcome, part of your mentality. And I think that is essential. Like, mindset is, no question, a huge component from what I've seen. But what would you say, in your opinion, like, how much is mindset? What percentage of, like, success is mindset, and what percentage is skills, would you say, for alone?
I would say it's probably it's probably somewhere around 70-30 mindset versus skills, or
Oh, interesting.
at least 60-40.
Yeah.
Like I was saying, you spend months training your skills, or a whole lifetime for some skills. Like everyone has their handful of skills that they've spent their entire lives on, and then you get out there and it all goes out the window. Like I had this huge plan for this nice shelter that was going to be built in the dirt, and I was going to dig down, and there's going to be a sump, and like a cold sump, and like a fireplace that I was going to build with these flat rocks that I had seen at base camp. And I get out to my drop zone, and there's none of that. There's not one single patch of dirt anywhere on my whole drop zone. There were no flat rocks, just granite boulders. So I think really you need to have a base level of skill. You need to know how to get food. You need to know how to purify water. You need to know how to build a warm shelter, and some other basic skills like fishing and processing game and things like that. But you could really probably figure that out on the fly. But you've got to be able to improvise. You've got to be able to think on your feet and make split decisions that are totally different than what you had planned in your mind. Because for me, like I really, obviously my most sharpened skill is the archery thing. So I really had played on small game and large game hunting with the bow. And in the first 7 days, I didn't see one single rabbit on the ground, not a single grouse. I had some bear scat in my area, like some really old moose sign, but there was no game on the ground other than squirrels, which were so small it really wasn't even. I mean, really, if you dink one in passing as you're walking by, which is what I did, like that's fine, but you're not going to go chasing them down because it takes you more calories just to get to the squirrel and process it out than you're going to improvise totally and build a net and rely heavily on fishing. So, I mean, everything that I had planned totally went out the window, and all the skills that I had sharpened really didn't play in. And you just have to be able to improvise, think on your feet, and be creative.
Yep.
That's going to save you more times than hard skills for sure.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead.
Oh, the very last thing is a certain amount of tolerance for suffering.
Yeah.
You're going to suffer. You're going to be cold. You're going to be eaten alive by bugs for the, in the Arctic until the first freeze. The bugs are brutal. They'll tear you up.
Yeah. They don't really talk about the bugs and that little stuff, like, the terrain just being so uncertain, like you could fall in a hole at any given time. They show some of it, but I can only imagine, like, that's an editor's nightmare, like getting 80 hours of footage from like 10 people, say, hey, make a show, here you go. But I mean, I think, I like watching the show just because it really does tap into our primal sense as hunter gatherers and just what it takes to survive. And it's raw and gritty, and I highly recommend all you guys check out History Channel season 7. Look at Correy, watch him. I'm not going to spoil the ending. He may or may not have told me a little bit in the pre-show, but I want you guys to check it out because it's worth the watch. Now, Correy, I want to get into just a couple more happy hustle hacks, and just let's get specific in terms of entrepreneurship. I know you run a successful small business. Talk to us a little bit about what you've learned and maybe a happy hustle hack that might help the audience that are watching and listening.
Yeah, I can only really speak for myself and for pursuing like an art or a craft that you want to make your full-time income. But I think some things that have been invaluable to me has been keeping my overhead low. Because it just increases your profit margin. Like you don't have to have the $4,000 laptop to start your business. I've been running this business you don't have to have the latest and greatest technology. You don't have to have the latest and greatest equipment in your shop. Like I've got a 1952 antique drill press out there that's been serving me for years for a long time without fail. I run the whole business on a $400 laptop. I'm still rocking the iPhone 8 because it still works great. It still does everything I need it to do. So I think, just know that you don't have to get into this massive black hole to get your business started. Like you can start with the basics. And it doesn't always have to be like the latest and greatest technology, because that's a huge money suck for a lot of people getting started is the tech. And another thing that's been probably the the most valuable for me is living a debt-free lifestyle. As a
Mm-hmm.
craftsman, I feel like when you have creditors, you have indebted servitude to them. Like you have to make ends meet by making a certain amount of income so that you can pay your bills. And the
Yep.
less debt that you have, the less bills you have, and the more money you have in your pocket. And it takes a lot less when you're first getting started and ironing out the kinks in your business and getting your systems all developed, and your income's low for those first couple of years. And just the less overhead and the less debt that you have, the more free time you have, the more money you have. It's worked out really well for me. So I
Yeah.
would advise, like, if you're gonna be a craftsman and you're gonna enter into a niche market that's probably not gonna have a high volume of sales, just keep your expenses low, stay out of debt, and you'll be just fine. I mean, you would be surprised how far money goes when you're not indebted to people.
Yeah, love that. I mean, those are great points. I personally am debt free. And when I paid off all my student loans and all the other stuff, it's like, it's liberating. And, there's a couple books that I like to recommend for those people who are, looking to get their finances on point. One is I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And another one, 6 Months to Debt Free. Do you have any books on finances that maybe you like or that you've learned a lot from in terms of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, one of my favorite books is called The Millionaire Next Door. And it
Cool.
talks about how there are all these shadow millionaires all over the United States who drive the base model F-150. They live in a $130,000 house, and they just have millions of dollars stacked away in the bank. And it's because they were smart and they were frugal and they made good business decisions and they stayed out of debt.
Yeah, and they live below their means.
Yeah, they live well below their means, and and the number, like, people hate math, right? But they just show you the basic math of like where you'll be on a $40,000 income, in so many years, and it's pretty mind blowing.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, that's just like, this is just a little snippet into my life right now, but Steph and I, we had this decision where, like, do we stay in Bozeman for the winter or do we spend time in a more tropical, less freezing cold place? So we're now looking into going to Patagonia for the same money that we're, spending here. We can get a badass, cabin in the woods of Patagonia or on the coast of Thailand. We're looking at a couple different options. But I mean, that's the power of, like, thinking through your decisions, living below your means, keeping your overhead low, and, just being debt free, I think, is one of the biggest things. If you don't have it cash, don't pay for it credit. So great points there, Correy. I like that a lot. In terms of spirituality, I don't know where you stand in terms of, one God or another, but I believe myself, in terms of just as a deeply spiritual person, I believe in a higher power. Do you have any happy hustle hacks in regards to spirituality that you could share?
I don't know if they would be hacks, I guess. I just try to I'm definitely a spiritual person, but it's kind of weird for me, right? Like it's all very tied into nature and this one divine source and sort of like the connectedness of all things.
Yeah.
And I think if you're a spiritual person who cares about the future and who cares about the environment, if you can structure your business in a way where you're doing more good than you are harm, like where it's sustainable and environmentally responsible, I think for me that ties a lot into my spirituality. Like I want to keep in mind when I'm cutting down trees and stuff for this business that I'm connected to all these things. This is all important for the ecosystem. It's all important for our future. So I only take what I need, and I try to keep my waste as low as I possibly can. I'm not a waste-free business, but I'm pretty close.
That's awesome.
And I think I think don't be afraid to take some time by yourself for self-reflection or talking to a higher power or praying or whatever you want to call it, like prayer journals. Maybe I do a lot of that, and
cool.
Yeah, it helps.
Yeah, those are, I mean, those are great points. Just being conscious of, your environment and being grateful for the oneness that how we are all connected, not taking more than you need. I mean, supporting conscious companies like B corporations that are, transparent and focusing on the triple bottom line, the people, the planet, and the profits. I just had on Oliver Gaucher on the podcast. He's a regenerative permaculture specialist and natural builder. I should hook you up with him. You guys would click. But I mean, we talked about some great ways that you can support your environment and just be more conscious with our footprint, carbon footprint, as well as, our waste footprint. So great points there, Correy. And I definitely think spending time alone, like you did definitely on the show, but even just on your day to day, you guys listening and watching, you can get out, just go 5 minutes for a little walk in the park and just spend some time reflecting on what's important to you, being grateful, and, maybe have a little prayer journal. That's a great point there.
Or like mixing in Eastern and Western ideas, like the ideas of mindfulness or full attention when you're working, or like keeping distractions out of the workplace, or deep breathing techniques really helps me in the shop. Like,
yep, just
staying super focused on my work. And there's a lot of different stuff that you can tie in. So don't be afraid to mix. There's a lot of people who are very rigid, like if it's not Christianity, then it's wrong. Or like if it's, you can say any one of the religions that you want, but I do like to mix in different ideas, especially meditation and mindfulness, and just yeah.
For sure, man. I love the mixture. I believe, heavily in the Taoist philosophy. I have a Kung Fu master who's a Taoist priest, and I'm big into the Eastern side of, religion and spirituality and the balance and the harmonious nature of everything. And, then I look to other religions and leaders and gurus who can, we can learn from everyone. We can learn from the homeless man on the street to the boardroom executive, right? So it's just being a constant student of life, I think is a beautiful way to really just tap into that higher power and, find gratitude in the process. So this has been great, Correy. I want to get into the rapid fire round. All right. And then we'll wrap this bad boy up. Okay. So this is basically just where I ask you random questions and you answer honestly. First thing that comes to mind. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Favorite movie? Go.
The Revenant.
Oh, good one. Favorite food?
Eggs.
Favorite book? You might have mentioned it.
The Way of the Superior Man.
All right. What is your spirit animal?
The hawk.
Oh, good one.
I know it's cheesy. It's the whole middle name thing and everything, but gotta be honest, I got a deep connection with those birds. So
you're badass. Best business advice?
Get out of debt.
If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Superhuman strength.
That's good. Speaking of strength, favorite exercise?
Deadlift.
Favorite, let's say, biohack, will you, for the mind or the body?
Let the food be thy medicine.
Oh, good one. One word you wish to be synonymous with your name for the rest of your life?
Oh, man. Conscious.
Oh, I love it. And final question, 3 things you're most grateful for?
My family, my health, and my mind.
Awesome. I want to just take a moment, acknowledge you, Correy, for sharing your wisdom, your love, your light with the Happy Hustlers. Give us some links and, a little bit more info where people can go to find out more about you, maybe even pick up one of your awesome custom-made bow and arrow sets. Give us some links, a call to action, will you?
Yeah, for sure. The only social media I use right now is Instagram. You guys can find me at organic_archer. And also I have a website, organicarchery.com. And the website's going to lay out a bunch of different information for wood species, warranty and care. And it kind of we'll have some information on there about the ordering process. And you'll also find under the contact page on my website the custom order form. And like we mentioned earlier, if you guys do decide to order a custom bow, leave in the comments at the bottom of the order form just the code HAPPY, and for this podcast, the Happy Hustle podcast, I'll give you guys 10% off the whole order.
Boom.
So,
love it. So organic archer on Instagram. You guys got to follow him. He's got a great page with a ton of really knowledgeable tips on archery and just it's engaging content. So highly recommend checking that out. And then if you do want a badass bow, custom made by yours truly over here, I mean, organicarchery.com is the spot. Code HAPPY will save. So thank you, Correy, man. I appreciate you hanging out. Final question. What does happy hustling mean to you?
Having the freedom to do something that you love every single day.
Boom. Just nailed it. Mic drop. Thank you, Correy. Thank you guys for watching and listening. We're out.